A very warm welcome, and thank you very much for joining us at this press conference with the Commission of Inquiry on Ukraine. The three members of the Commission are here with me, Mr. Eric Mose, Jasminka Jumhur, and Pablo de Greif. The commissioners presented their oral update to the Human Rights Council this morning. Nearly 60 states participated thus far. We have a number of NGOs that are going to speak after this lunch break at 3 p.m. The commissioners will be back in the council chamber to resume this dialogue. They'll deliver some concluding remarks. They wanted to take this opportunity to meet with you. This is the first time that the commissioners are holding a press conference, full press conference here in Geneva. Just to recall that the commission was created by the Human Rights Council in March this year. The three commissioners subsequently were appointed by the president of the council just a few weeks later. So I'll turn immediately to Mr. Mose for opening remarks, and then Ms. Jumhur will also add some points, as well as Mr. de Greif, and then to you for your questions. Thank you.
Yes, just a little good afternoon and just a little introduction. As you know, we just delivered our oral report to the Human Rights Council. And the report we have submitted now, this oral report relates to 4 areas in Ukraine. And these 4 areas were selected because they were mentioned in the second resolution by the Human Rights Council. And they are Kiev, Chernihiv, Kharkiv, and Sumy. As regards our methodology, very briefly, we focus on events in view of their gravity, their significance in demonstrating patterns of alleged violations, and the possibility, of course, to gain access to victims, witnesses, and supporting documentation. And based on the evidence gathered so far during the Commission's existence, we found, after having carried out the investigations in these 4 areas just mentioned, we found that war crimes were committed in Ukraine. Explosive weapons were used by the Russian Federation forces without distinguishing between civilians and combatants in populated areas. We were struck by a large number of executions and other violations by Russian forces, and the Commission received consistent accounts of torture and ill treatment under condition of unlawful detention in facilities both in Ukraine and in the Russian Federation.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your interest. And there are always questions related to our investigation on violation against children and gender sexual violence. And the war in Ukraine has taken a tragic toll on the lives of civilians, including the displacement of the third of population. The Commission investigated cases of sexual gender-based violence. It documented cases in which some Russian Federation soldiers made such crime. Also, we documented that children were exposed to violations and crimes, including forced displacement and separation from family members. In the 4 areas, the Commission has processed 2 incidents of ill treatment against Russian Federation soldiers by Ukrainian forces.
Thank you very much. If I may be allowed a small parenthetical remark, I want to thank all of you. I happen to think that the press plays a very important role in accountability processes. So thank you very much for your interest. The Commission will continue gathering evidence. We are at the midway point, more or less, of our existence, and we will continue gathering evidence. Now going back to the broader mandate that we received in the resolution that created the Commission in the first place. That is broader geographically, but also thematically. It will continue to try to share and to coordinate as much as possible with other judicial and investigatory instances, And it will continue to work on what it has called its victim-centered approach, which we interpret as first trying to prevent re-traumatization and the re-interviewing of victims, adhering meticulously to respect for them and to respect for issues having to do with the disclosure or the confidentiality of information, as the case may be. But also it interprets a victim-centered approach as supplementing the judicial accountability measures with other measures that may make a difference for the life of victims, such as measures of recognition, measures of reparation, and measures of prevention. So I'll stop here.
Thank you all very much for those remarks. Over to you for questions now. We have Agnes from AFP in the room.
Yes, thank you. So Agnès from Agence France Presse in Geneva. We would like to ask you about the crimes against humanity, because you are talking about war crimes, and we wanted to know if you have evidence of crimes against humanity and any indication you have on that. Thank you.
So far, we have not concluded that there are crimes against humanity. This is an ongoing process, and we will continue our investigations and our analysis, but we have deliberately stated that we have found war crimes.
Follow up. Go ahead, Agnes. Yep.
Yes, sir, if I may follow up, could you explain why you haven't found that crimes against humanity? Is there something that is lacking, and could you explain us what?
There is a need for partly more evidential evidence and partly for more analysis. And this is, as you know, preliminary findings, and it's a general strategy of this commission only to say what we are convinced about. And at this stage, this is where we are.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mose. We have a bunch of questions coming from online. We have Laurent Sierro of Swiss News Agency. We'll start with Laurent.
Yeah, thank you, Rolando. Thank you, Rolando. Thank you, commissioners, for the press conference. First, as you investigated in the broader Kyiv region, that was one of the 4 regions which were requested by the council. Could you tell us what conclusion you drew on what happened in Bucha? And this morning, there was a call by the Ukrainian representative to investigate the situation in Izium. Is that going to be the area where you plan to investigate next time you go to Ukraine? Thank you.
Bucha was one of the places where we found executions and ill treatment before executions, as mentioned in our oral statement. And as regards Izium, this is of course a novel incident, but we certainly intend to look into the Izium event as well.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll turn now to Jamie Keaton of the Associated Press.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Rolanda, for taking my question. I wanted to just touch on a couple of things. First of all, for the issue of war crimes, can you say specifically who was responsible, or at least which side? I mean, it wasn't totally clear to me whether you were referring to the Russian side or the Ukrainian side, and what specifically are the war crimes that you're talking about? And then just the second thing is about the numbers. I didn't see a lot of numbers. I mean, is that because you haven't thoroughly vetted them yet, or that you're relying on OHCHR numbers, or that you're just not able to say? And if I could slide in a third one, sorry, how do you articulate with other investigators like the ICC or the OSCE monitoring mission? Are you coordinating in any way with them, or are you is there a possibility that you may double up on the information that you collect based compared to what they are collecting? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the questions in plural. Let me take them in reverse order, if I may. With the ICC, we have a regular contact, and that's a relationship that was established from the very beginning, as was with the monitoring mission. Each of the institutions has a different mandate. All of us are independent. The resolution, however, asks us to coordinate with other judicial instances, and that is precisely what we are doing. So there is regular communication with them within the mandate of each of the institutions. Concerning the numbers, we have found two instances of ill treatment of Russian Federation soldiers by Ukrainian soldiers, and we mentioned this in our statement. We have found, obviously, significantly larger numbers of instances that amount to war crimes on the part of the Russian Federation. And we do not go into the specifics in terms of numbers, in part because this is ongoing. We go by on the basis of primarily of our own investigations and testimonies and evidence that we gather first, that we can corroborate by other means. But we are, again, in the middle of a process, and therefore citing specific numbers is a bit of a useless exercise. In terms of the concrete events that we think constitute war crimes, we also mentioned some of them in the statement that we made: indiscriminate use of force, the against civilian populations, executions, torture and ill treatment, sexual violations of different types, including sexual violations against children, and in some cases, elderly women. So, I mean, the catalog is broad. We gave a sample of this in the statement, and I think that that would be a good place to start.
Thank you, Pablo. We'll take a question in the room from Nabil from Al Arabi TV, just in the back there.
Thank you, Nabil Abisab, Al Arabi TV station. So how high you can go in the hierarchy of responsibilities of these atrocities on both sides? Did you manage to reach certain names or level of authority on both sides? And second question about mercenaries or foreign fighters in general. Obviously, there is a lot of reports about foreign fighters on both sides. Did you establish any facts about their role also in the atrocities? Thank you.
In principle, we can go as far as the applicable norms, human rights norms, and the international criminal law reach. That means that it goes all the way to the top. That's in principle, but of course that requires necessary evidence. And at this stage, we are more at the ground level. When it comes to the issues of names, that's something we would have to come back to in our final report. It follows from our mandate that we shall try to individualize perpetrators, and we will do our best to do so. And if we manage, then we will certainly deal with that in our report in March 2023. As regards foreign fighters, I'm not aware that that has been an issue.
Thank you, very much, Mr. Mose. We have Jan Dirk Herbermann of German newspapers. Jan Dirk, go ahead.
Yes. Good afternoon. Jan Herbermann. I write for Tagesspiegel Berlin and other German language media. Basically, I have two questions. The first one, do you have any contact to the Russian army or to other Russian authorities? And secondly, I'd like to ask you on the nature of the war crimes committed by the Russian troops. Do you have indications that they commit these crimes in a sort of systematic way, or is it more a sort of spontaneous act they commit? Thanks.
I will take the first question and then Ms. Zumbulu will take the second one. We have not been in touch with, we have tried to reach out to the Russian authorities, but have not far succeeded, but we will persist in our efforts.
Thank you for your question, and having in mind that we have a really limited investigation during the past few months and limited areas, we came out only with crimes which we specified in our oral statement. We didn't find still that such behaviors present patterns, but we will continue with our investigation. Definitely that's what we can confirm, that ill treatment, killings, sexual violence, torture have been made by individuals which at that time when they made crime were under Russian soldiers.
Thank you very much. We now have a question from Stefan Vospernik of Austrian Press Agency. Go ahead, Stefan.
Yes, thank you very much. Good afternoon from Vienna. My question is, I would just like to get it right. Is it true to say that war crimes were committed by both sides, by the Ukrainian side and by the Russian side? Or does this ill treatment of the Russian soldiers that have been reported to you do not amount to a war crime? And the second question is, what was the reaction of the Ukrainian side? Are those soldiers that have ill-treated the Russians, are they being fined, or is there any action being taken? Thank you.
War as such always create opportunity to have unlawful behavior of individuals. Such isolated cases is something what happened, and therefore we in our report specified that during our investigation in this stage we find only 2 cases where Ukrainians made some violations towards Russian soldiers. But on the other side, we have made full observations of our findings based on evidences collected, analyzed on dimension of crime made by Russian side. And therefore, we can't say that there is equality, that we only bring facts, and facts is that such a significant number of violations in Ukraine from Russian sides determined that we said that there has been made a war crime.
Thank you. We have Emma Farge from Reuters online. Go ahead, Emma.
Good afternoon. I was hoping you could put your findings into perspective for us. Is this the first time that an international body has come to the conclusion that war crimes have been committed by Russia in Ukraine? I know Ukraine has, but an international body. Thanks a lot.
I think there have been numerous reports about this. The the possibility or the likelihood that there will be war crimes or other crimes have been mentioned also in previous reports. But here we have been on the ground, conducted an evidentiary mission, and on that basis have concluded that what we saw amounted to, according to our evidence, to war crimes.
Thank you, Mr. Mose. No more questions online. Any more in the room? Yes, go ahead, Ambela.
Are you working with third parties or governments to collect information, mainly maybe satellite footages, drone videos, etc.? We see a lot of open sources information on the front lines. Also, the Russian government always says that the Russian ethnicities or communities in eastern Ukraine have been subject to harassments or discrimination. Have you seen any evidence that they also were subject to atrocities or crimes? Thank you.
Just to the second question, we have not found evidence to that effect based on our mission to these 4 areas.
Yeah, and if I may, an additional point to the one just made by the chair. Please keep in mind, we have not had access to the areas that are not controlled at present by the Ukrainian government, which is where some of the sources of those allegations come from. So we haven't had the opportunity to do direct investigations other than indirectly through other sources. Regarding your first questions, we rely, and this is a point to emphasize, we rely primarily on evidence that the Commission gathers itself. We have, of course, made a call for information, which is public. It's in our website. People have responded to those calls, so we are open to information from many different sources, but ultimately the conclusions that we include in our reports, including in today's oral statements, are conclusions that we arrive on the basis of evidence that we have gathered ourselves. Interviews, documents, crime scene investigations, the investigation of weapons, remnants. We have obviously a team of investigators in the Secretariat. That team has been to Ukraine, of course, and our main sources are sources gathered directly, although again, of course, we are open to receiving information from other parties subject to our analysis subsequently.
Thank you. We have a question now from Carmen Lucia of El Tiempo. Go ahead, Carmen.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Rolando, and thank you very much, commissioners, for this press conference. So back in May, you raised concerns regarding the budget. I would like to know how it is going. Do you have enough staff? Do you have enough resources? And if not, well, what do you need? Thank you very much.
Well, the UN has adopted a budget for this commission. It provides us with secretariat in Vienna, consisting of 22 persons, and 2 are to come. With other words, we have 24 persons employed in our secretariat. This staff is composed of 8 investigators, and the staff includes experts in gender issues, sexual issues, digital competence, etc., etc. So, of course, given the magnitude and the short time available for this mission until March next year, one could always wish, but this is acceptable. This is what we have, and we will, with those resources, be able to complete our mandate as expected by the Human Rights Council.
Thank you. Okay, we have Nina Larson of AFP online. Nina, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for taking my question. I just wanted to circle back to what you were talking about earlier about possible perpetrators. I know that you haven't listed any yet, but I was wondering if you were preparing to draft a list as other commissions of inquiry have done, and if that's something that you're preparing to do for future prosecution. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. The mandate that created the commission calls on us to try to make attributions of responsibility. So this is part of the framework within which we operate. Of course, whether that is possible or not depends on the availability of evidence, and that will determine whether such a list can be compiled or not.
Thank you. A question now from Antonio of Spanish News Agency. Antonio? Okay.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Go ahead. Yes, very well.
Thanks. I just want to clarify if it's you three who have been in Ukraine, or it's your team who has done the investigation on the ground. And I also would like to know if you have received any pressure or threats that try to make your investigation difficult. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your question, and I must say that we have been twice in a mission. Commissioners were in June, and our investigators made additional investigation in July, August, and we haven't registered any threats. Opposite of that, we have excellent cooperation with all actors, and particularly with civil society. And definitely that what we present today to Human Rights Council is based on our direct collecting evidences.
Thank you. Okay, any further questions in the room or online? No, I don't see any questions popping up. So on that note, I'd like to thank you all again very much for joining us, and for you for this important reporting that you're doing. And of course, to remind you that the commissioners, as noted, will be back in March to present a comprehensive written report. We'll have information on the date closer to that encounter. So thank you once again.
Recording stopped.